Medical ethics is being inverted. Find out about that and more in today's edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back to Life Matters. We're your radio program on the right to life, on the culture that has emanated from that very singular idea. Because that's an idea that states clearly you have a life, and you have a right to be alive. And the founders of this nation wrote that out, that your right to be alive doesn't come from the government, it comes from your creator. But the government does have a duty, and that duty is to ensure your right to be alive, that no one take it, someone who's stronger than you, or someone who doesn't like you, or someone who might have a cultural agenda, that the right to life of the innocent would be protected as a foundational premise of our society, and if you look back, it's a foundational aspiration of Western civilization. We're going to talk about that today, and as you know, with a program on life, on culture that comes from that idea, and the battle of ideas. And there's a very real battle of ideas raging right now about the right to life, about what the meaning of life is, about who should be protected and who shouldn't. If you don't realize there's a battle, you've lost. I'm sorry. If you don't realize that there is a battle right now for your mind and what you think about the right to life, you've already lost the battle. So our goal on this program is to prepare you for this battle of ideas, to help you understand what's at stake. What happened in 1973, for example? What happened was that the Supreme Court of the United States made an incredible decision, striking down the laws of all 50 states. Every state in the nation actually had laws on the books that said that unborn children needed to be protected under the law. Those are human babies, vulnerable human babies. But the Supreme Court in the Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton decision, they struck down all of those laws. I want you to understand that, but what's at stake is more than just abortion. And many, even pro-lifers, don't understand this isn't just about abortion. The right to life is what was undercut as a premise of our society and the law, as a premise of medicine. And today we're going to talk about that in great depth. This will be our third program in a row on the coronavirus. And if you haven't been listening on the radio, we also record these. We do record them as podcasts. And this will be podcast 213. Podcast 211, we talked about the positive side of what's happening with the coronavirus. And there's actually a bright silver lining to what our nation went through in the spring of 2020. Very significant. That was program 211. In the next program, 212, we spoke about you in particular and what you should be doing. And just so you know, we do echo a lot of the instructions culturally. It's a very dangerous virus. It's as infectious or perhaps more infectious than the common cold, which is also a coronavirus, by the way. But this is a deadly cold. So we talked about what you can do personally. And now in this third program, I'm hoping this will be the last one. So if you want to know about coronavirus from our perspective, or at least mine, send people to the podcast to these three separate programs because we go into great detail. But this one, I believe, is the most important. Because really the theme here in today's program is the right to life as it applies to your culture, perhaps in a way you've never seen it. And I'm going to give you a phrase that at the end of this program you should know by heart. And it's a phrase that you should be willing to stand up and fight against. And that is intentional medical neglect. You may not have heard that term before, but if you're a pro-life individual, and you only think that the issue of the Roe v. Wade decision and choice and reproductive rights and all the other phrases and words that the culture uses about abortion, it's just about women, it's a woman's issue, you don't understand this battle of ideas. And we want to equip you to understand that in 1973, it wasn't just that unborn babies could be killed. It's that the law itself was assaulted and the practice of medicine was assaulted. Because medicine for 3,000 years has been guided by a singular idea, and that is do no harm. A doctor swears in the Hippocratic tradition that he would never harm or kill a patient. But in 1973, the Supreme Court said, no, doctors can selectively kill human beings. They're hired killers. You actually can have a child. If you want that child, well, that's fine. But then you can choose which child to be killed, and then you pay a doctor. Pay a doctor to kill that child. Well, that is an assault not just on the child and on the whole notion of motherhood. That's a direct assault on one of the fundamental institutions of society, and that is the practice of medicine. And if you don't recognize that and what that means, the implication of what that means for your whole society is it's inverted our values. You live in a cultural dystopia. If you don't know what that is, it's a society that says everything's fine, but it's not. And that society lulls people with ideas to think it's okay, it's acceptable, it's a choice. It lulls them into inaction. It lulls them into not caring. It gives them soma, which was a form of drug used in one dystopia just to keep people calm. Don't worry. But you live in a dystopia that says certain classes of human beings can be killed at will. Those classes now of human beings, we talk about the unborn child, but those classes have now expanded. The real sick. If somebody's really sick, well, we should be free to put them out of their misery. You know the rhetoric, we've talked about it before, but we're going to talk today about the real implications. Now, in our society, we're going through social upheaval. We literally, in some ways, we're in World War III. And that is, we actually have an entire lockdown throughout the world in order to fight this virus, and a social emergency, a societal emergency. And many Americans are being prohibited from leaving their own homes. I was actually out the other day in a parking lot when I was shopping, and I heard the broadcasts. And it was out of an old movie where they have cars with speakers on them. These happen to be speakers in a parking lot. Reminder, stay 6 feet apart. Reminder, social distancing. Reminder, stay home. It was eerie. We're going through that right now, but there's more. And I want to equip you now. In this program, we're going to talk about being ready now, because the right to life is under assault. It has been under Roe v. Wade. It has been by its progeny, which are the decisions that have allowed intentional killing, aggressive killing, through killing a sick patient or killing people who are no longer productive. We've talked about that before. But now with the COVID-19, you're seeing members of our society moving now towards the idea of intentional medical neglect, the idea of medical abandonment for that person's sake. And that is very ominous. We want to prepare you for this battle. And if you're pro-life, if you don't know what intentional medical neglect is, think back to when Governor Northam was talking about the new laws in New York and Virginia that allowed abortion through all 9 months. And if the kid is born alive, well, Governor Northam very casually, he was a pediatrician, it sounded like he had done it. He very casually said, well, if the kid's born alive, we're gonna keep him warm and we'll decide what to do with it later. As if this is a hamburger. We'll decide if we're going to have that hamburger later or just throw it out. Human beings are disposable when the right to life has been removed from cultural values. We're going to talk about what you need to know, what you can do about it, some of the real heroes right now in the battle of COVID-19, but some of the real zeros, the people who are advocating some bad ideas. Where did those ideas come from? Have they infected your culture, your values, your family, your own mind? And you know what? I have found there's many good people who come to wrong conclusions because our society has been pumping these bad ideas that certain human beings shouldn't be alive. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Life Matters is sponsored by the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee. To find out more on how you can help and be involved right where you are, go to californiaprolife.org. That's californiaprolife.org. We'll tell you how you can get involved in your local community, how you can be effective if you want to be a pro-life speaker. We have training programs and open doors of opportunity for you to speak on the life issue. If you'd like to donate your car or a boat, you can do that at californiaprolife.org. Car Easy makes it easy, and you find that on our website. We get the most of any donation program. Car Easy allows us to get the most out of your car. Maybe you're not getting the trade-in value you wanted. Maybe it's just not running the way it used to. Let your car be used for life. Go to californiaprolife.org and find out what you can do to make a difference. californiaprolife.org.
Be sure to subscribe to the Life Matters podcast with Brian Johnston. Go to lifematters.life to subscribe. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, we're back. As I said, we're talking about intentional medical neglect. What is it? You need to understand that term and why it actually was considered a cursed thing to do. It was against the law in our society. It was considered an immoral action by many. Right now, I want to congratulate Dr. Birx, who many of you know is the woman who is a specialist in infectious diseases, has been counseling the president, and she was great when she brought up what was in the newspapers already, that there were ethicists and people of authority, doctors, suggesting that there should be automatic DNR orders for people who had this particular illness. And DNR stands for Do Not Resuscitate. And of course, the reason that's significant is that right now, how medicine's dealing with severe cases, there's only one way they've approached it, and that is you need a ventilator. And if you have a DNR on a ventilator, that means, well, don't put them on the ventilator. And we know because the nature of this illness, your lungs fill with very thick fluid, not just fluid, very thick fluid, like wet cement. It's very hard for your lungs to function. So if you're not on that ventilator, you're dead. So in this case, a DNR is killing them. And thank God, Dr. Birx just was very good about that. This is ridiculous. How dare people suggest that? But it is suggested. And I'm going to talk about why those ideas get popular truck in your culture. And I have to tell you, this program is heard on many Christian stations. We're on talk stations. Again, we have our freestanding podcast. But we're also on Christian stations. I want to tell you, I know many Christians, and it's appalled me. People have said they're pro-life regarding abortion, and yet they're willing to accept some of these ideas. And I want to go back with you. If you're a member of 21st century American culture, you've probably heard this example. I know in the 70s, when I was in high school, it was a standard quote-unquote teaching principle, and that was the lifeboat example. And literally our culture has been inured to definitive values, and we've been trained to be moral relativists, and that was one of the purposes of the lifeboat example. And basically, if you're not familiar with it, kids are taught, oh, well, imagine, if you will, you're in a lifeboat and you only have limited water and food, and you're out at sea, and there's no help coming, and here are the following 7 people, or whoever it is. And they describe in detail each person. Most of them are healthy. A couple of them are clearly unhealthy. Some are old, some are young. And now you're supposed to do a comparative and contrastive analysis. What's the best way to deal with this? Who should live? If we only have enough water for so many people, therefore, well, somebody must die. And if you're going to be mature, you have to learn how to decide who's going to die. That is a false analysis, but it trains people to think in a certain way. As I said, you're involved in a cultural battle, in a battle of ideas. And ideas have consequences. So I have met people who have actually bought into this form of judgment and relativism. And it's a very dangerous predicate. It's also some of the idea behind the overpopulation myth. As you know, that is a myth. It's demonstrable that it's a myth. It's been proven. If you listen to our program, I've had many experts on overpopulation explain the myth of Malthus. And this is simply untrue, but it gets people thinking that, human beings as a class are a problem. And when you start dividing people into classes, when you start removing the humanity and think of them as things, now they're disposable. And that's part of the problem with the overpopulation myth. It dismisses the value of an individual human life and just throws them into a group that's now a disposable group. As we said, that's what abortion did. Unborn children are not worthy of legal protection. They're not human yet, ostensibly. Science proves that's wrong, but you know the thinking. Overpopulation has that same idea. Well, population control is necessary. All that population is, that's a mass noun, and it describes individual people. So if you don't mind population control, that means you don't mind people control. So getting you to think a certain way is part of what happens in a dystopia. And if you speak out against dystopic ideas, you're seen to be a weirdo. Well, I don't mind being seen as a weirdo then, because human life has value, and you and I have been given a society built on the foundation of the value of every human life. You've got to fight for those ideas. Okay, so back now, right now, to the COVID-19 situation. There are people, and we mentioned it earlier again, a hero, Dr. Birx. Thank you, Dr. Birx. But there's other voices out there too, and you hear them all the time, and that's suggesting that maybe there's policies we could pursue. I mentioned to you that there was a volunteer Israeli doctor in Italy who, at the end of March, he came out and he said that he was told to not treat anyone over 60. Now, again, I want to mention something known as triage. For those of you with background, if you don't know, if you're just learning about this program, I work with the Right to Life movement. I'm the chair of the California Pro-Life Council, the affiliate of National Right to Life. But in my personal life, I've been a commissioner on aging for California, was actively involved with nursing homes, with the people in nursing homes, but also the policies overseeing nursing homes. And this is an important issue because nursing homes is one of those categories of places where we keep that category of people, older, dependent people. That's who's at risk. In every society, the vulnerable, by definition, are the ones that are at risk. Those who are considered less than perfect. Those are the ones that can be disposed of because they're not going to fight back. Baby's not going to be able to fight back. It's disposable. A grandma who's sick, she won't fight back. Oh, and you know, this is the law now in California. If you're an heir, you can actually go to grandma and say, Grandma, you know, I know it's hard, all the illnesses you have, but, you know, as soon as you're dead, I'll be able to buy that house we wanted to get, can send Billy off to college, and here's a document, it's assisted suicide, and we'd be glad to help you. That's legal in your society. Why are you quiet about that? That is legal. We're talking about intentionally killing. Give them a shot. Give them deadly pills. But now I want to speak about something just as deadly, but it seems nicer, intentional medical neglect. Now, intentional medical neglect, as I said, that's what Governor Northam suggested and that the state of New York, Governor Cuomo, and several other states had put forward. And that's where a baby, you want to kill that kid. And, oh no, the worst situation, the kid's born alive. What do you do? Well, the goal was to kill the kid. So be careful. And the president overstated this. He said that then they're intentionally murdered, but it's a little bit different. There's nuances of language. They're very careful in how they word it because it's a battle of words, a battle of ideas. No, as Governor Northam says, we'll just set them aside till we decide what to do with them. Now, I know individuals that happened to. Some have actually, thank God, survived. And you may know them too. There's quite a few. You can see their testimonies. Jonna Jessen, Melissa Oden, incredible women who survived an abortion because they were set aside to die. The doctor said, let nature take its course. But in fact, brave nurses stepped forward to say, no, that's not what we do. Those nurses were fired, but they saved lives. This happens. Intentional medical neglect has become an accepted practice. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
They say sunlight is the best disinfectant. Did you know that California has a law on the books that says you need to protect babies born alive in the course of an abortion? But that law is simply ignored. The current legislature and Governor Newsom's administration support all abortions all the time. And they simply do not examine or regulate the practice even though our tax dollars pay for it. We need to shine a light on this cover-up of the abortion industry in our state. Go to californiaprolife.org and click on the Light of Day Project. We need the facts about late-term abortion to be examined and made known. We need the government doing its job to protect lives. We need the light of day on this. Go to californiaprolife.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
We're back, and you're listening to Life Matters. We know that intentional medical neglect has happened. It's in the case of the infants that can't protect themselves, classes of people, and young mothers are convinced this might be the best thing. They're emotionally traumatized. And the professionals, the medical professionals, no longer follow the Hippocratic Oath. They violate the very premise of why you should honor doctors. Doctors are very honored. But the reason they're honored in our society is for 3,000 years, doctors have sworn they'll only serve the life of others, and they'll never harm. Sorry, not the case anymore. Wake up and smell the coffee. Intentional medical neglect is being proposed as an answer now, and particularly in the era of COVID-19. I want to say one other aspect about medicine. You know that you're living in a dystopia. Please understand that. I love America, but we're not following the principles that America is founded under. And there have been other nations in history that have become dystopic nations. One Western advanced, very bright culture was Germany of the 30s. And you know what happened there. I don't want to rub it in too much, but let's face it. What happened at those death camps, I hope you understand that most of those deaths were overseen by medical professionals, and that medical killing was adopted by the Nazis long before the death camps. They started with the disabled. They started with the medically dependent. They started with institutions for their vets, the World War I vets. Many of them had been mustard gassed. They were incurable. You could only feed them and care for them and change their chucks, change their diapers. That cost a lot of money. They didn't like it. So they decided it'd be more compassionate to actually use mercy killing for the incurable. And that was the beginning of the end. You should also know this, though. If you look back at the human experiments that were done under Nazi doctors, these are doctors, they wanted to learn medical science. I am told that Dr. Mengele, the father of the famous twinning experiments done in the death camps, he initially did not agree with the death camps. But since these people were going to die anyways, how much better if we could use their death for the sake of humanity? Again, a vague mass noun. Individual human lives are disposable, but the phrases could be used. And so he began the twinning experiments, where basically he was a good scientist, by the way, because good scientists need not just individual you're experimenting on, they needed a control. And what a better control than to have a twin who you didn't experiment on. Then you could have a measure by which to see whether your actions have in fact impacted that person's life and health. But that was one of many experiments. Most of these experiments actually had to do with what does a human being do when they've been denied something. One of the most famous were the freezing experiments, and these were principally done in the Polish camps. And they would take Polish young men and they would throw them in freezing water. They would take careful notes. These are good scientists. And they would determine how long the man could live in freezing water. They wouldn't try to help him. They had to take notes. Many Nazi pilots were going down in the North Sea, and they wanted to expand that. They wanted to cross the Atlantic. Cold water there. They needed to know what was needed. So they would experiment. Oh, let's throw this next guy in with this jacket on and see how long he lasts. Those are the famous Nazi freezing experiments. At their heart, they did things they could have helped that person. That person died of freezing. They could have pulled them from the water, but they used intentional medical neglect to see how long they would last. This is actually a very common problem. And if you don't think so, think again. It's what you don't do. Now, some of you may still be confused, and I want to clarify morally. This is different than letting someone die of an underlying illness. If someone has cancer and they're inoperable, it's ethically acceptable to not operate after a while. That's all right. But you still have to care for that patient ethically. Give them food and water. Give them pain medication. But don't intentionally kill them. So you see, in that case, they're dying of an underlying illness. In intentional medical neglect, they die from the neglect. You could have done something to sustain their life, but you've decided you will not offer that. You will not care for them. They don't die from their own underlying illness. They die from the circumstance that you refuse to help them with the basics of life. That is the ethical difference. It's the intentional killing through intentional medical neglect. It's very common. It's been proposed in the COVID-19 situation. People are thinking that way. Many people will accept it because of the battle of ideas. They've come to accept the lifeboat mentality, the relativism of human lives. Human lives are relatively valuable depending on how smart they are, how healthy they are, how much they're going to cost me. So relativism comes into the formula. So we're in a battle of ideas, and ideas have consequences, and lives are at stake in this battle. It's not a metaphor to call it a battle. If the right ideas are enacted, lives are saved. If the wrong ideas are enacted, lives are lost intentionally. The right to life is about the battle of ideas. You need to be ready for it because these could be lives of your loved ones. If there's a policy, and that's been proposed, that all nursing homes that have COVID, no one be allowed to examine or go in, that there need not be appropriate treatments given. In some ways, gosh, once they're gone, we can stop the spread of infection. It's a terrifying approach to vulnerable human beings. In true ethical triage, you don't dismiss the patients on the basis of categories. Oh, we'll only heal the rich ones. We'll only take care of this race of people. No, triage is based on need. And you go to where the greatest need is that you can fulfill and save a life. You go there. It's not based on classes of people. People over 60, oh, don't treat them. These kinds of kids, we won't treat this race of kids. That is not ethical medicine. And yet this attitude has been imbued into our culture through relativism, through the lack of understanding what the right to life is, why the law has been assaulted as well. We've talked about that in the past. Medicine was directly assaulted by the Roe v. Wade decision and the law, because the purpose of the law is to protect those that can't protect themselves. And if you recall, a lot of these ideas were pushed and pushed and pushed. It literally was Margaret Sanger who said, you can selectively kill certain babies. That should be ethical. She said the kindest thing a large family can do is kill its youngest member. That's selective medical killing, and our culture has quietly accepted that. Why are you silent? Please don't be.
If you have questions or comments for Life Matters, call 800-924-2490. Give us your name and the town you're calling from and a quick question or comment. Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. Wherever you are in the nation, you can find out more at National Right to Life. You can find vital pro-life information and also find the access to your state and local Right to Life affiliate. Get informed and get involved.